Why do we tell these stories? It's a paradox, isn't it? We spend our lives building walls, installing alarms, seeking comfort and safety. Yet we willingly invite the chill of fear into our homes. Why do we lean in closer when the tale turns dark, when the whispers start? What is this morbid curiosity, this magnetic pull towards the abyss? It's because these stories speak to something deep within us. There's a part of us, a primal, ancient part, that understands the fear of being watched. This isn't a modern neurosis. It's a survival instinct etched into our DNA, a terrible, necessary gift from our ancestors. For millennia, they navigated a world where being observed often meant being hunted. The snap of a twig, the shadow that moved just at the edge of vision, these were not trivial things. They were signals that meant the difference between life and death. That hypervigilance, that innate ability to sense an unseen presence, is hardwired into us. The fear of the stalker is the ultimate evolution of this ancient dread. It's a fear older than cities, a terror that predates locks on doors. Before we had walls to hide behind, the greatest danger was the one you couldn't see, the predator that watched from the tall grass, patient and silent. The stalker taps directly into this primordial terror. They are the modern predator, and their hunting ground is our life. They don't just want to harm us physically. They want to dismantle our reality, to colonize our minds with fear, to become the ghost that haunts our every waking moment. This is why it feels so visceral. It's the feeling of eyes on your back on an empty street. It's the sudden, unnatural silence in the woods that tells you you're not just alone. You're being observed. It's the car that's been behind you for the last 5 miles. The anonymous social media profile that likes a photo from 3 years ago. The flicker of a curtain in a neighbor's window. Our modern world has simply provided new shadows for the old monsters to hide in. The jungle is now concrete. The predators now look just like us. Stalker stories, then, aren't just entertainment. They are a mirror to our deepest anxieties. They reflect our fear of losing control, of our personal sanctuary being violated. The home is supposed to be a fortress, the one place where the world's dangers are kept at bay. The stalker narrative shatters this illusion. It tells us that the walls are meaningless, that the locks can be bypassed, that the threat can already be inside. It's the ultimate violation, not just of space, but of self. The victim is no longer a person, but an object of obsession, their life no longer their own. These tales remind us the monster isn't always under the bed. Sometimes the monster is the familiar face in the crowd, the one who knows your name, your schedule, the color of your bedroom walls. The true horror lies in the realization that the greatest threat isn't a supernatural entity, but the terrifying, obsessive, and relentless depths of another human mind. The monster is real, and it's watching. Our first story takes us to Greensboro, North Carolina. This is where a woman we will call Tracy lived. She was a university student, but then, strange things started to happen. A noise from upstairs. Then, objects in her apartment began to move. She heard soft footsteps above her. One night, the noises from the attic were louder than ever, and that's when they found him. Our next story takes us to Japan, a country where ancient tradition and futuristic technology coexist in a dazzling, sometimes dizzying display. In the sprawling metropolis of Tokyo, millions of lives unfold in public and online, their digital footprints weaving an invisible web across the city. But in this hyper-connected world, the lines between admiration and obsession can blur with terrifying speed, and the web that connects us can just as easily become a trap. Her name was Emi Tanaka, though her thousands of followers knew her by her online handle. She was a food and lifestyle blogger, her corner of the internet a bright, cheerful space filled with beautifully curated photos of latte art, delicious pastries, and the quiet, charming corners of her city. She had built a community, a digital family who shared her passions. For Emi, her blog was a source of joy and connection, a way to share her world. She had no idea that someone was watching, not as a fan, but as a predator. It started innocently enough. A new commenter, using the handle Observer22, began appearing on her blog. At first, the comments were flattering, praising her photography and her taste. "You have a real eye for beauty," one read. "It's like I'm right there with you." But soon, the tone began to shift. The comments became more frequent, more intense, more personal. He started noticing things, small details in the background of her photos, the pattern on a teacup, a specific book on a shelf, the reflection of a street sign in a window. He was piecing her life together, one digital breadcrumb at a time. The flattery curdled into something possessive. then menacing. "You went to the Ginza district today. You shouldn't wear that blue coat, it's too conspicuous." Emmy's blood ran cold. She had never mentioned her plans or what she was wearing. The digital world she had so carefully cultivated was no longer a safe space. It had become a window for her tormentor. The final breach came in a private message, a handful of words that shattered her sense of security completely. "I know where you live now." Paralyzed by fear, Emmy tried to reclaim her life, forcing herself to stick to her routine. A few days later, while walking home through a bustling Shibuya crosswalk, a place she'd photographed 100 times, her phone buzzed. It wasn't a comment or a message. It was a notification from a social media platform she rarely used. A new post from a user she didn't follow, but her username was tagged. Her heart hammered against her ribs as she opened it. It was a picture of her, in the blue coat, standing right where she was, in the middle of that crosswalk. It had been taken just moments before, from a distance, likely from a window in one of the towering buildings overlooking the intersection. The caption was simple and terrifying. "I see you." Panic set in. She scanned the crowds, the faces a blur of indifference. She ducked into a side street, her breath coming in ragged gasps. As she leaned against the cool glass of a shop window to steady herself, she caught a movement in the reflection. Across the narrow street, half hidden in an alleyway, a man was lowering his phone. He had been pointing it directly at her. Their eyes met in the reflection for a fraction of a second. There was no anger in his expression, no emotion at all, just a flat, chilling sense of ownership. It was the look of a collector admiring his prize. Before she could even scream, he turned and melted back into the river of people, vanishing as if he were a ghost. A digital ghost who had crossed over into her reality. The police were called, but what could they do? He was a ghost in the machine and a ghost in the crowd. Emmy deleted her blog, erased her online presence, and moved to a new apartment. But the damage was done. The stalker had stolen more than her privacy. He had stolen her sense of safety in the world. This case is a stark reminder of the dark side of our online lives. Stalkers can weaponize seemingly harmless information. Geotags embedded in photos, reflections in sunglasses, familiar landmarks in the background. They are patient, obsessive, and adept at turning the tools we use to connect into instruments of terror. For victims, the psychological scars can last a lifetime, a constant fear that they are still being watched, their every move tracked by an unseen observer in the digital shadows. Our final story takes us to Westfield, New Jersey. On the surface, it's the quintessential American dream. A peaceful, affluent town where families come to plant roots and watch their children grow up in safety. It's a place where the biggest worry should be which park to visit on a sunny afternoon. But nestled amongst the idyllic streets was a house that held a dark secret, waiting for the right family to awaken it. At 657 Boulevard stood a magnificent 6-bedroom Dutch colonial, a home that seemed to promise a lifetime of happy memories. In June of 2014, Derek and Maria Broaddus purchased this house for $1.3 million. It was the culmination of everything they had worked for, the perfect place to raise their 3 young children. They were on the cusp of their new life, spending their days doing minor renovations, their children already picking out their bedrooms and imagining the games they would play in the sprawling backyard. Their dream was finally within reach. But they were not the only ones watching the house. Just 3 days after closing the deal, before they had even moved in, Derek went to check the mail. Among the junk mail and welcome cards from local businesses was a single thick envelope. There was no return address. It was addressed in clunky, handwritten letters to the new owner. Curiosity quickly gave way to a cold, creeping unease. Inside, a typed letter began with a deceptively friendly yet unsettling greeting. "Dearest new neighbor at 657 Boulevard, allow me to welcome you to the neighborhood." But the welcome was short-lived. The author quickly established a chilling premise. They claimed the house had been the subject of their family for decades. "My grandfather watched the house in the 1920s, the letter read, "and my father watched in the 1960s. It is now my time." The writer, who signed off only as the Watcher, spoke of the house as a living entity, something that called to them. "Do you know what lies within the walls of 657 Boulevard?" it asked. "Why are you here? I will find out." Then, the letter turned its focus to the most vulnerable part of their lives, their children. The Watcher had clearly been observing them during their renovation visits. The letter mentioned the number of children the Broadduses had, and their birth order. It was a horrifying confirmation that their family was being actively monitored. "You have children. I have seen them," the letter continued. "So far, I think there are 3 that I have counted." And then came the line that would haunt their nightmares. "Once I know their names, I will call to them and draw them to me. Are they the young blood the house has been waiting for?" The family was paralyzed by fear. They immediately contacted the police, who advised them not to tell anyone, not even their new neighbors, as any one of them could be the suspect. 2 more letters followed over the next few weeks, each more specific and terrifying. The Watcher now knew their names, calling them by name and even giving their children creepy nicknames. The letters asked, "Have they found what is in the walls yet?" and claimed the house was anxious for them to move in. The psychological toll was immense. Their dream home had transformed into the source of their deepest terror. How could they possibly move their children into a house where a predator was watching, waiting, and referring to them as young blood? The sanctuary of home had been violated before they even spent a single night there. They were too terrified to move in. 6 months later, having never occupied their dream home, they put it back on the market. But the story of the Watcher had leaked, becoming a twisted local legend. No one wanted to buy the house. They lost hundreds of thousands of dollars, their life savings drained by a mortgage on a home they couldn't live in and couldn't sell. An extensive police investigation, including DNA analysis of an envelope, led nowhere. The Watcher was a ghost. The case remains unsolved to this day. The identity of the Watcher is a chilling mystery, a testament to the fact that horror doesn't always come from a monster with a mask. Sometimes it comes from a simple envelope in the mail. It's a reminder that the sanctity of our homes is fragile. So tonight, when you lock your doors, listen to the silence of your own home. And maybe, just maybe, someone is watching you right now from the dark, wondering when it will be their time to welcome you to the neighborhood.